A tattooed Hulk named Jimmy Cullen paces his cell, waiting for release. A photograph of him with his brother Gary hangs on the wall. Finally, the prisoner is led out of his cell, and a prison worker gives the former criminal some parting words and a business card in case of difficult situations on the outside. But he's only interested in one thing: where's the exit?
You have any questions? Where's the exit?
Barely outside the prison walls, he tosses the card and decides to stretch his legs after the long journey. Along the highway at some junkyard, the hero finds his stylish muscle car, a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle. Under the seat, he also finds a revolver loaded with bullets. Traffic rules aren't taught in prison, so the hero parks without paying attention to the cars on the highway and heads to the office. There, he doesn't stand on ceremony and immediately goes looking for one of the employees. Before understanding anything, the office clerk takes a bullet to the forehead. After this, the driver leaves, but notices he was caught on a security camera. The next scene takes us to a roadside motel, where in the bathroom, a man tries to buy illegal substances from a dealer. He pulls crumpled change from his pocket, but the dealer doesn't accept such payment. After a brief argument, the buyer still manages to convince his acquaintance to make the deal. He goes to his car with the purchase. This is experienced police detective Slade Humphreys, who is heavily addicted to drugs. In the office where the main character killed someone, there are police everywhere, and one of them turns out to be that same substance enthusiast. Nobody is particularly happy to see him, especially female Detective Cicero.
You can't smoke in here.
The next scene begins in a small office where the driver arrives. Two people there are watching a TV report about the recent murder. When Jimmy walks in, the guy sitting at the desk, Roy Grome, says he's been a very bad boy. He asks for money for the car he left for the hero. The hero pays and asks his helper for the names of the other accomplices involved in his brother's death. His contact says the price for information has increased during the hero's 10 years behind bars. This doesn't suit him, and he doesn't agree to the new price. The informant then tries to set his bodyguard Kenny, a champion in no-holds-barred fighting, on him. However, when he sees the tattoo on the driver's arm, all his fervor disappears.
Here, I owe you a refund. Here you go.
Meanwhile, at the station, the police and his new partner Cicero watch video footage from the office where the main character killed his first victim. They notice that the killer and the clerk knew each other. While the police investigate the crimes, the main character heads to his next target. We're introduced to a new character in the film. His name is Killer. The guy lives in a richly furnished house with his beautiful lady Lily. Photos of him are hung on the walls, including magazine covers with his face. It's also revealed that in childhood, Killer had serious problems with his legs and spine. After his workout, he wakes his lady and talks with her in the yard. Killer claims he's outgrown yoga and now needs something more extreme. For a killer, he looks too cheerful, but he still gets an order for a new target over the phone. In the photo the client sent, Jimmy. Without unnecessary questions, and with his girlfriend's help, Killer gets ready, takes weapons, and drives off in one of his sports cars. At the police station, female detective Cicero studies a photo of the driver's tattoo. Sergeant Mallory apologizes to the lady that she has to work with the cop, but asks her not to interfere with his assistance in the investigation. Cicero shows the cop a photo of the killer they found through surveillance cameras.
I see you kept score.
Yeah, Warden said all he had to do was flash that ink and no one would screw with him.
Cicero tells the cop that the hero was arrested 10 years ago for a bank robbery in which he participated as the driver. Driving in reverse is particularly helpful. Apparently, the police have no defense against such a technique. While Cicero continues to fill the cop in on the case details, we're transported to an old man's house where Killer is conducting surveillance. The old man comes to the apartment not alone, but with a young girl who helps him with groceries. He persistently urges the guest to drink something. Suddenly, the driver pulls up to the house where all this is happening. Meanwhile, the main character gets out of his car and moves toward the old man's dwelling. Killer follows him and enters the door. The old man slips something into his caregiver's drink and waits for her to pass out. As a flashback, we're shown footage that the cop and Cicero are watching. It was filmed on an amateur camera, showing the driver and his brother being taken hostage by other bandits.
Want me to shoot him, huh, like the others?
The criminals say the only chance to survive is to tell where the loot is hidden. The hero is afraid for his brother. Eventually, the driver confesses where the money is. Immediately, his brother Gary's throat is cut. The whole thing is filmed on camera by the old man Killer is surveilling. The film returns from the flashback to the present. The elderly gangster named Kenito Tyson tries to justify himself by saying that some boss forced the bandits to kill the hero's brother. Jimmy leaves the frightened caregiver in the apartment and runs out into the corridor. Killer is already waiting for him there. However, the hero pushes her into an adjacent room and begins a shootout with the killer. He doesn't shoot at Killer, but forces the guy to hide around the corner. This trick gives the main character time to escape. We're shown the end of the flashbacks, where the protagonist takes a bullet to the back of the head. The bullet goes through, and already in the hospital, the main character unexpectedly rises from the dead. His skull is held together by a metal plate. The cop arrives at his child's mother's place, and she accuses him of being late. He tries to justify himself by saying he got a serious case, but the woman doesn't care much. The lady threatens to deprive the detective of parental rights and orders him to hurry to the game.
What position they got you playing at?
Don't play much.
The cop promises to talk to the boy's coach, but then Cicero calls and asks him to come to the crime scene. Hearing this, Tommy gets upset, but his dad pretends he worked it all out and will stay at the game instead of work, trying to win his son's favor. As a result, the cop arrives at the crime scene half an hour late and gets an unpleasant comment from Cicero. The murdered old man turns out to be a fan of filming dirty videos, and the police also understand that he filmed the murder of the driver's brother. In addition, they know about the shootout with Killer, but the identity of the second shooter hasn't been revealed. Sitting in a hotel room, Killer tells his future bride Lily that the target turned out to be not so simple. He praises the driver for acting coolly and fearlessly. Then he decides that proposing over the phone is a great idea and does it. His chosen one smiles, about to say yes. The next day at the station, Cicero notices a strange tattoo on the cop's arm. It turns out that before his transfer, the officer served in the Los Angeles Homicide Department.
Guns blazing, ass-kicking cops with porno mustaches? That crash?
There, the cop met his beloved ex-wife, Marina. She was his informant. It also turns out he underwent rehabilitation for addiction, but tries to brush off his partner's strange looks with a phrase about it being ancient history. The cop lies that he quit when his son was born. The driver's next target is a woman. He watches her from the car window as the lady sees a boy off from the house. The main character decides to pay her a visit. He takes a pistol and enters the premises. During the conversation, and after an invigorating slap, we learn that in the frame is not his target, but his ex-wife, Nan. It turns out the man forbade her from visiting him in prison for 10 years, and now thinks the boy he saw from the car window is his son. But it's not. The woman has already started another life, and the main character's child didn't live to birth. His mother had an abortion. While the main character's drama unfolds, Killer decides to have a lavish wedding with his bride, Lily. It involves races in cool cars, a beautiful ceremony, and of course, the most romantic part of the wedding, shooting at cans. The guy offers his wife to start a new life from scratch in Pasadena and promises to quit his job as a bounty hunter. Meanwhile, the cop arrives at Marina's and invites himself into the house.
What are you doing here?
I thought you didn't care about my case.
The cop offers to start over, but the lady refuses and says she has another life. Trying to convince his chosen one, the man even gives up his stash of substances and promises to go to a clinic, but only after finishing the case. He asks for at least one day to spend with his ex-wife and son. She hesitates but doesn't refuse. Meanwhile, to the sounds of the radio, the main character drives to a new target in the night. He stops in front of a strip club, tracks down the right person, and goes inside. His target turns out to be a bouncer, Habus Nixon. This is the man who cut his brother's throat. Jimmy locks the door. The brother's killer loses the duel and asks the driver for forgiveness. He also asks the main character to call his son and convey his father's apologies.
Hello?
Your father's sorry.
Who is this?
Killer, sitting on the couch, looks at photos from his life. Reaching childhood and his mangled legs, his face changes, and he begins to feel the scars. After this, he frantically starts cleaning his weapon. Lily catches the guy at this. She hopes her husband will abandon his plan, but he decides to finish the job and quit the dangerous profession only after. The cop wakes up in bed with his son. The son says he doesn't like baseball. The father replies that the boy will learn, he just needs practice. He finds Marina in the bathroom in a drugged state. After this, the cop throws the remaining substances in the trash and falls asleep with Marina. The fourth day of the narrative begins with the cop and killer leaving their homes in the morning. Cicero calls the detective and says she's found a lead. Both of the driver's victims were police informants and participated in his brother's murder. She asks the cop to verify the information, but he replies that he must talk to the stabbing victim, that same bouncer, the main character attacked at the strip club. Ignoring Cicero's request, the cop drives to the ICU for questioning. The main character hears on the radio that his brother's killer, whom he wounded the day before, survived and is at the clinic. He dramatically spins the car 180 degrees and races at full speed toward the hospital. Killer's client also informs him about the surviving target and assumes Jimmy will head there first. The cop arrives first. However, the main character doesn't keep anyone waiting long. In his usual manner, he barges into the operating room and kills him. At the sound of shots from the next room, the cop runs out. He chases the main character all the way to the basement and starts a shootout with him. At one moment, the driver catches his opponent off guard and puts him on his knees, but as soon as he closes his eyes, the hero disappears. The driver gets into his muscle car and drives away. On the way, his brother's killer's son calls him. The boy threatens to take revenge for his father. The main character tells him to do what he must, but be aware of the consequences of his actions. At this moment, Killer catches up with him from behind. The risky chase doesn't last long. The annoyed Killer gets a call from the client, who tells him he's withdrawing the order. However, the guy doesn't want to give up so easily. The driver goes to his brother's father's house, suspecting he might have betrayed everyone after the robbery, but only the main character's mother is there. The woman stitches up her son's wound and says her husband loved Gary and therefore couldn't have betrayed him. Taking his brother's ashes, he sets off to meet the next target, and along the way, endlessly wonders who set up their gang. At the police station, the cop tells his partner how he met the driver at the hospital and miraculously survived. Cicero shows the cop a possible list of the Avengers' targets. They're all snitches who served minimal time for serious offenses. Meanwhile, the driver catches up with the last target on his list. It turns out to be preacher Alexander Jared. The man tells the Avenger he quit dirty business long ago and now tries to set as many people as possible on the right path. It was he who, during the hero and his brother's capture, didn't want them killed.
Oh, Jesus, man, no!
Before the walk, his wife and child come in. The main character clearly falls into a stupor, seeing them, but doesn't change his plan. On the way to the shore, the men talk. It turns out the preacher is the father of 12 adopted children. The priest honestly admits what he did and regrets it. He says he took his share and went to prison, where he turned to God. The main character hesitates for a long time, but then puts his target on his knees and prepares to shoot. At the last moment, he shoots to the side, releases his victim to his family, and goes back to the tent temple. There, Killer finds him and raises his pistol. He's in no hurry to shoot and wants a fair duel and recognition of his merit. Seeing the list lying next to the main character, the hitman notes, there should be one more person, his client, but he doesn't name him. Meanwhile, the recently arrived cop gets out of his car.
I want you to do me a favor, will you? If I don't make it out of this, tell my son that his daddy went out like a man, will you?
He heads to the temple and slowly approaches Jimmy from behind. The cop orders Killer to drop his weapon. He agrees under threat of death. The moment he lowers the pistol, a shot rings out. The policeman shot the driver in the back of the head. He turned out to be the client and the one who tried to kill the main character the first time. The cop tells Killer he decided to get involved when he saw the hitman couldn't kill his target at the old man's apartment. He shows him the list and says the driver didn't even know about the client's existence. The cop says he understood this when the main character didn't shoot him in the clinic basement. It turns out Gary's girlfriend, Marina, was the detective's informant. She betrayed the gang completely. After this gripping story, Killer leaves the tent, but the cop catches up with him and tries to pay for the order. It turns out the young man charges only $1 for his services and calls contract killings his hobby. In the end, he says he's done. Cicero drives to the crime scene and along the way realizes that all the involved informants actually had one boss, the cop. It dawns on her that he might be involved in what's happening. The girl calls the station. They tell her the cop volunteered to take this case himself. And then everything finally falls into place in her head. The cop calls his chosen one to say the case is closed. He's in good spirits and thinks everything will be fine. But a shot in the back interrupts his flow of positive thoughts. The steel plate in the main character's head proved stronger than the bullet fired into it. Cicero arrives at the crime scene and finds the cop's corpse. The woman doesn't tell colleagues about his past. At sunset, the driver scatters his brother's ashes over the reservoir and drives away in his car toward the horizon, while the preacher at that time reads his congregation a sermon on forgiveness.